Hello, this is Livia Lucar, and this is vlog 7 for English 231 on misinformation, disinformation, and algorithmic bias. All three of these concepts are extremely prevalent in today's society and new media, specifically on the information we gather from new media and how we interpret what we see and why we see what we see. So, misinformation in particular is common across almost all social media platforms. Since people are allowed to share anything, it's also common for people to spread wrong information. As a society, our attention spans are getting shorter. That is a known fact. However, many people are starting to take advantage of this and intentionally spread false information. This is what classifies as disinformation by targeting the other side to gain more likes or gain more followers. A specific example that I can remember from misinformation is during the COVID era when social media was pretty widespread and our main source of kind of spreading and getting information. People were claiming that drinking water was a way to cure COVID 19. While this claim was not backed by any scientific evidence and it is incorrect, whoever stated this and started this trend believed that it was accurate. This was not an attempt to deceive the other social media users. This information was shared with a disinformation type of lens. It would have been posted, um, for example, like to market a brand of like bottled water companies or use some sort of medical advice of like staying hydrated while you're sick as some sort of form of manipulation to try to get people to purchase their products. That's just one way that disinformation can also overlap with misinformation. So, this example shows the key differences between misinformation and disinformation, since disinformation is deliberate. This is a common form of propaganda that has intent to mislead the audience. Unlike misinformation, this form of falsely sharing information is often made to influence the public's opinion and morph the truth. A specific example of disinformation from an environmental standpoint is oil companies running campaigns that actively are downplaying climate change. Since these companies rely on fossil fuels, which are detrimental to the environment, they have shifted fossil gas into more of kind of branding it as a clean fuel, trying to alter public perception and contribute their own way of contributing to global warming. The most common distinction that I was able to find between misinformation and disinformation is that misinformation is often shared accidentally. While the post was intentional and the content on the post was intentional, the creator does not always intentionally share the false information that they are sharing. On the other hand, disinformation is something that is deliberately created to share and spread false information. This intentional misleading of others is typically done to achieve or convey ideology, especially in politics. Social media does amplify the usage of both of these concepts. However, they probably would still be relevant in society if we didn't have such a large shift in the media sector of our society. So, finally, algorithmic bias happens when an app shows content or ideas more than others unfairly. So, this type of bias usually occurs because an app leans more on the data and algorithms to outreach more information and more content to the users, just to see what we interact with the most. On platforms like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, this bias affects the content that we all see. These apps suggest content based on what we have interacted with the most in the past. So, by favoring content that gets more engagement, the app is able to create a feed that isn't so balanced, which is an example of algorithmic bias. I personally notice the most algorithmic bias in the social medias that I use. I personally see it most on my TikTok. My For You page is constantly reloading new content similar to what I have already interacted with in the past and seen before. This repeating of similar content is a specific design by TikTok to keep users more engaged with how we interact with the app. If we like something, we're going to see more of that content. If we follow someone, we're going to see users similar to that user or some sort of mutual friends. Um, TikTok is a system that is designed to show content that users do enjoy watching, so this algorithmic bias is unintentional. However, I do start to see it more on social media where it is becoming more intentional, specifically on Instagram's For You page. That is kind of curated with both profiles and posts. You can definitely see the algorithmic bias on Instagram as well as YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, not just TikTok.